I lost my sight. But this morning, miraculously, I could see again. I wanted to tell my parents the good news, but I found a crumpled up tissue under my bed. There was a message on the tissue: don't tell them you can see. 3 months ago, I lost my sight because of a car accident. My parents moved us away from the city in order to take better care of me. But this morning, I miraculously regained my sight. I was just about to tell my parents the good news when I suddenly noticed a crumpled up tissue under my bed. I had an extremely strong demand for cleanliness, so I picked it up, but there seemed to be something written on the tissue. As I smoothed it out, I frowned. Don't tell them you can see. The handwriting was messy, as if someone had written it in a great hurry. There was no one else here. Them obviously meant my parents, but then I had no idea who could be the one leaving this message. During these 3 months, the only people who came to my room were my parents and my husband, Noah. Just then, there was a knock on the door. Ella, I've made you some soup. My mom's kind voice sounded from behind the door. I casually threw the tissue into a dustbin, but when I opened the door, my pupils shrank. A woman was standing at the door with a bowl, looking at me, smiling. Her lips were bright red, and the smile on her face looked eerie. She was not my mom. I jerked back a step and looked at her with a shocked face. My mom was a kind-looking woman, but this woman looked very shrewd, and her features did not bear the slightest resemblance to my mom. But the strangest thing was that her voice was exactly the same as my mom's. I was just about to question who she was when I suddenly remembered the message on the tissue. Don't tell them you can see. Ella, what's wrong? Not feeling well? The woman took a worried step closer to me. Just leave the soup here, Mom. I'll eat it later. I fumbled to sit back on the bed and said slowly, you should have it while it's hot, Ella. Why don't you let me feed it to you? The woman said. I immediately refused. But I'm still a little sleepy, Mom. I want to take a nap. I'll eat it later. The woman didn't insist as she left the bowl on the nightstand and went out. The moment she closed the door, I let out a sigh of relief. My back was completely drenched with cold sweat. Where had my mom gone? And who was this woman? I was really worried about my mom, so I opened the door and walked out. It was the first time I saw where I had been living for the past few months. The spacious 2-story villa. I stood on the second floor and saw a man sitting on the sofa in the living room with his back to me, reading a newspaper. This must be my dad. I looked around to make sure the woman was not in the room, and then lowered my voice as I called out, Dad. The man turned his head, and I saw his face. Fear swept through my entire body, for what I saw was not my dad, but another face that was completely unfamiliar to me. Ella, what's wrong? Yet from the man's mouth came the voice of my dad. I squeezed out a smile. Nothing, Dad. The woman walked out from another room. Her bright red lips pulled into an extravagant smile. Ella, weren't you going to take a nap? Oh, changed my mind. Maybe I don't need a nap that much. Mom, I smiled. Then let me help you eat the soup. The woman brought out the soup from my room and fed it to me with a spoon. I was very anxious, afraid that the woman would notice that I could see, but fortunately, she did not seem to notice anything. I could hardly taste the soup, because I didn't know what the woman could have put into it. What's wrong, Ella? You are sweating so much and look worried. She noticed something after all. She approached closer with concern. Her eyes were staring straight into mine. Those eyes were very large, but the white took up most of them. Oh, I just don't know when my eyes will actually recover, I said, pretending to be frustrated. The woman smiled. Don't worry, Ella, you'll be fine. I squeezed out another smile as the woman stroked my head lovingly. When I returned to my room, I immediately locked the door and sat down on the bed. My chest was full of fear. Half a month ago, my husband, Noah, had come to visit me once. My husband was a plane captain and had a very busy schedule. That time, he had a good talk with my parents and even got drunk. So he spent the night in the villa. That meant that half a month ago, my parents were still my real parents. I found my phone, which had been set in voice mode since I lost my sight. I called Noah. He answered immediately. Noah's voice was as gentle as ever. Yes, Ella? I just got off the plane. I can come and see you now. Noah, this might sound crazy to you, but believe me, all I'm going to tell you now is true, I said in an urgent tone. Noah was silent for a moment before he said, I will believe whatever you say, Ella, no matter what it is. I told Noah everything. I'm coming over right now, Ella. The airport was about an hour's drive away. The thought of Noah coming over eased a lot of my anxiety. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Ella, it's time to take your meds. My dad's voice sounded outside, but I knew it wasn't my dad. It was that strange man. My heart beat faster, and I stared at the door. As I didn't answer him, the man began to turn the doorknob. Why did you lock the door, Ella? Your eyes won't heal if you don't take your meds. The man urged me to open the door, but I was determined not to open it, not until Noah came over. Asleep? Okay, the man chuckled. I heard his footsteps going down the stairs. I breathed a sigh of relief, but something felt strange. I had a strong feeling of being watched. I walked nervously to the door and listened for movement outside. It was completely silent. Sounded like the man was gone, but I still felt uneasy, so I carefully got down to the floor, wanting to have a peek outside from under the door. A pair of eyes with a lot of whites outside. The man also got down to the floor. His eyes were staring straight at me. I was instantly covered with cold sweat. I pretended not to see him and slowly groped on the floor, Strange. I think I just dropped my phone around here. Those eyes disappeared from the slit. I collapsed on the floor, gasping for AI or That's so freaking creepy. What did this creepy couple want from me? I didn't know where my parents had gone, and now the only thing I could do was waiting for Noah to arrive. After an hour of torturous waiting, Noah finally called. He sounded very anxious. Ella, where the hell are you now? What? I'm at the villa. You've been here before. Have you got to the wrong place? I also got more anxious. I am at the villa, but I don't see you. Or your parents. So dusty here, like no one has lived here for a long time. Noah sounded puzzled. I was appalled. Noah sent me a photo. Indeed, it was the villa. But Noah was right. It seemed to be unoccupied for a long time. The sofa was covered with a thick layer of dust, and the room corners even had cobwebs. Clearly, that was not the villa I was in right now, but the layout was exactly the same as this villa.